Marina Morgan, welcome to the Tick Boot Camp podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We are blessed to have you, and I think we should first begin by introducing you to the folks who are not aware of you, and that maybe there are not many people of the many who are going to be listening to this podcast initially who have not heard of you. But why don't we first talk about what you're primarily known for? Not just having a beautiful voice, but being, of course, a
Thank
professional
you.
singer and songwriter, and having I don't know if you wrote the song, but the song "Paralyzed" that you've shared with the world, which is so much in line with so much of what we think about and talk about here at Tick Boot Camp. So talk to us about that part of who you are.
Yeah, so when I originally was diagnosed with Lyme disease, like during that time, it was really difficult to cope with because, um, which I feel like a lot of other people go through with this, is that you feel very detached from like not just the world, but like the people around you. And I needed an outlet to sort of figure out like how to get through it because it was just so difficult. And music has always been my passion. And I said, you know what, why not write a song about this? I'm like, if I can motivate myself to write a song about these difficulties, maybe I can inspire other people. So that was what I did. And I put, all of my being into writing Paralyzed. And then I decided that I wanted to use that to just help raise awareness to Lyme disease. So that's really what that's how that all came to be.
So it is a really cool song, and I certainly want to invite folks to go to YouTube and find the song. It really is a really powerful song, and it's a really beautiful song, and you have a really beautiful voice. So,
Thank
Marina,
you.
would it trouble you if I asked you to sing a couple of refrains of the song right now, or is that maybe something a cranky old man shouldn't ask you to do?
No, I could do a little bit of it.
All right.
So it goes, what's wrong with me? I can't breathe, but I won't be paralyzed, fighting back all my fears, 'cause I won't be paralyzed.
That is beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
I rarely clap at this stage of a podcast, but that was really beautiful. So talk to us
Thank
about
you.
what inspired you to write Paralyzed, because I want to talk to you a little bit about this as we get to the end and the transformational portion of the podcast and some of what we've learned about the paralyzing nature of Lyme disease, which is why this song spoke so powerfully to me. But talk to us about why, you wrote about your experience as a paralyzing experience, or I guess would it be proper to say a paralytic experience?
Yes. So, there was a few things that actually made me write about paralyzed specifically, and one of the reasons was because I was having issues walking at the time. I still do. I'm actually in a wheelchair. I'm relearning how to walk, but specifically during that time, one of my symptoms was off balance. I was having a hard time moving my legs, and then I also had a when I was a kid, I also had another autoimmune that left me paralyzed and in a wheelchair, and I lived in a children's hospital. So I relearned how to walk again. So when I got the Lyme disease, it just kind of brought all of that back. So I said, why not, put it into a song and just like tell myself, like, even though right now I can't maybe move or, like having issues with the walking or whatnot, that I refuse to let it define me. Which is why that's how like paralyzed. And then I just also said, like, paralyzed could mean so much to different people. It doesn't have to just mean like I can't walk, because like with Lyme disease and really any autoimmune, I just feel like you do feel like stuck in like, one split in one space. And you just don't want to feel like that, and you want to push it and you want to overcome that. So which is why, I just felt like paralyzed just felt appropriate. I connected with it, and that's how, I ended up coming up with that idea.
That's really beautiful. It really is beautiful, and so one of the things we've talked about here at Tick Boot Camp, from the over 600 people we've interviewed in a long form podcast, is that we as human beings are physical beings, we're emotional beings, and we're spiritual beings. And what we find is that Lyme disease is not just paralyzing physically, but it's also paralyzing emotionally, and it's also paralyzing spiritually. So much so that it, in many cases, causes you to suffer an identity shift where you really lose who you are. And we teach identity as being either a true identity or two false identities. You can have an identity, you can have a my identity, or you can have a lie identity, right? And your identity is who God made you to be, and who God made you to be to serve, and the people you're supposed to serve. But what happens, unfortunately, is when we get sick from Lyme disease, in many cases, we lose our rudder, we lose our identity, we fall down into believing all the lies we've been told during the course of our lives, right? Our emotional immune system breaks down, right? And we start to believe all the lies that we've been hearing all during the course of our lives about what we can't do and who we are not. And then, of course, in many cases, what happens is instead of having an immune system that will protect us from that, what we then is we then begin to create a response to that, which is what we call the my identity, right? And we create this false identity to disprove the lie identity, right? But it's still not who we are, right? And it's because we're paralyzed from seeing our true essence. We're paralyzed from serving the people we're supposed to serve. And because we're paralyzed from doing that, we're not just physically paralyzed in the cases like folks like you are struggling physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. So talk to me about that observation that we've made here at Tick Boot Camp, where it is paralyzing in every level. And how does that relate to the way you wrote the song?
So basically, I do like I agree with you with the whole like, you lose like your identity with that because, I was definitely I definitely feel like I've lost myself like over the years with, just with dealing with it. And that's how I was feeling at the time when I was writing the song because I was super outgoing. I was with my friends all of the time. I mean, I was 22 when I got diagnosed. I was at like the peak of like my of like my young adulthood. So like I was like I wanted to be involved in everything, wanted to do everything. I was working. I really like I feel like I was just doing well as a 22-year-old, and then to have that happen, it um it just kind of, yeah, like I definitely changed because I couldn't do those things anymore. So I really felt very stuck because all of my friends now, they're going out, they're having a great time, they're partying and whatnot, and I couldn't do those things anymore. Things that were so easy for me, just trying to get errands done, like going to the store, a simple task, I just couldn't do it. I mean, even going to work, I would miss days and days of working, and I really just felt very, very stuck. So it really did mess with my head a bit. It took a while for me to get over that. But like I said before, with writing the song, that was like my outlet to talk about that and that was my inspiration to write the song because of how stuck I felt.
So one of the things that I was wondering before we started the podcast, because my only contact with you was listening to your song several times on YouTube, is whether or not you were going to talk like me and Matt as New Yorkers, or whether or not you were going to have a different type of accent because you have this very beautiful and powerful voice. And I'm really happy to hear that you do talk like a New Yorker. So
I
uh,
do.
so so there was a time on this podcast where we did not interview another person from the East Coast for probably a year or so, right? And then we
Yeah.
finally ended up interviewing a woman from New Jersey. We were like, thank God we have somebody who talks like us. It's like we felt like we were foreigners,
Yeah.
like so I'm really happy to learn that despite you not having any type of accent when you sing,
Yeah.
you are very much a New Yorker. So talk a little bit about where you're from and what it was like growing up in New York. Well, I guess it's New York and New Jersey, right? You're a dual citizen, but certainly both in on the East Coast.
Well, I'm in Staten Island.
All right,
So,
there we
yes.
go.
So, yep. So I grew up in Staten Island. Trying to think, it was just it's you guys are you guys familiar with Staten Island?
Oh yeah, so I mean we're from Long Island, but my my
Oh,
my
okay.
my mother was from Brooklyn. My family's from
Yes.
Brooklyn, and many of our relatives did when they left Brooklyn, either moved to Long Island or Staten Island. You always go to the one of the Guylands, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so we have family in Staten Island.
Yeah, I that's the thing. So I was born actually in Brooklyn, and then my family moved to Staten Island when I was about 4. So yes, I've been, I've been here, pretty much. I mean, um, I don't know what to say about growing up here. I
No,
mean,
no, no. I
it's
mean,
pretty,
again,
it's pretty boring.
we're just trying to, we're just trying to, we're just,
I mean,
yeah.
I love it. It's just, it's a little boring.
Yeah, no, it is. But talk to us about again in the spirit of course being a Lyme disease podcast. What we're always interested in is what was the environment that you were growing up in? What impact was the environment having on your health? Were you aware of Lyme disease and ticks? Were you taking any steps to protect yourself? And build that out for us, right?
Yeah.
Because although Staten Island is a part of New York City, it really is not a part of New York City, right? I mean,
No.
it's really a suburban county,
Yes.
and it's very much like Long Island, even though so it's much more suburban. So talk to us about again what it was like to live there. What kind of interaction were you having? Was it a healthy place? Were you aware that Lyme disease was something that you could contract? Give us that piece of it.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, we kind of knew what Lyme disease was here. Um, There we have a lot of deer. So like that was also a very big thing. And I do believe that I got it when I was running through the parks here because Staten Island has a lot of like different parks with trails. And I was a really big runner before all of this. And I would go off the trails like into the woods and stuff, but like never really thought that I would get it from here. Because you know what, my dad actually had Lyme disease about 15 years prior to me having it. And we always thought that he got it because we would go camping a lot upstate. So we always thought he got it from there. But Staten Island is known though for having a ton of deer. And then once like I ended up getting diagnosed, I would hear of other people getting diagnosed as well. Um, but I mean, but before that, I mean, I feel like in Staten Island, you wouldn't really hear much about it. There wasn't too many cases of it. Um, yeah, I'm not really.
So you shared with us earlier that you dealt with a autoimmune disease during your childhood. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that surface and what was the genesis of that autoimmune disease?
Yeah, so when I was 13, I was diagnosed with it's called ADEM, acute demyelinizing encephalomyelitis, and basically what happened was I had a my body attacked itself. It attacked my brain. I had a virus, and instead of my body attacking the virus, it attacked the myelin that was in my brain and attacked the part of my brain that allowed me to walk and also move my arms. My legs were the ones that like I couldn't move them at all when I was first diagnosed with it. My arms just had like an ataxia. Like I would tell myself, okay, go pick up, a crayon or whatever it may be. And it would take like my brain would be delayed by like a few seconds. So it would take a little bit longer. That we ended up resolving that. But I ended up having to go to a children's hospital to relearn how to walk again. I was on, a lot of steroids and some other treatments, and I lived there for about 2 months. And I relearned how to walk and all of that. But that was 10 years it was actually 10 years prior to me getting diagnosed with the Lyme disease, but we actually thought that at first we thought it was a relapse of what I had when I was 13. But when I went for all the testing, and it ended up being the Lyme, but it was like kind of similar because both of the illnesses attacked my legs.
Okay, so let's talk about that window. So you had the first autoimmune disease when you said you were 12 or you were 13,
13.
and then you received your Lyme disease diagnosis when? How long after that?
10 years later, 23.
Okay, so what was your health like between 13 and 23?
It was really good. I was great. I actually had no issues like in between that time at all. I was extremely active. I went off to high school, did everything there. Went to college for a bit. And then it wasn't until like I said my early 20s when I started like probably on my 21st birthday, I started like having like weird symptoms again. But in between then I was completely fine. Like I said, I was a really big runner. I exercised every day. Had no issues.
Okay. So do you recall having been bitten by a tick at some time between your 13th birthday and your 23rd birthday when you were finally diagnosed with Lyme disease?
No, so I never saw a tick bite anywhere, but I also in that time frame, like I said, we used to go camping a lot upstate. So I was always like outside. I was always doing things. So it really could have been like anywhere.
Of course. So you said that your dad had Lyme disease at some point before you were diagnosed. You said it was about 15
Yes.
years before you were diagnosed.
I would say around, yeah, between 10 and 15 years, I would say.
So what was his journey like? Was he sickly and then he got diagnosed? And is it possible that he had Lyme disease at the time that you were conceived?
No, I don't think so. I think he ended up getting it like he got his diagnosis maybe like a year that's for like he was going through symptoms. I think maybe like a year later he got diagnosed with it. But he ended up the reason why he knew, which is why we figured out what I had, was that he lost his vision. And that's how they figured out that he had the Lyme disease, which and ultimately, and when I ended up getting diagnosed, that was how I ended up finding out as well.
Okay. So build out that 10-year window between the challenge that you had with the autoimmune disease and then ultimately your Lyme disease. What were you doing? Were you working as a professional singer? Were you developing other skills? What were you doing in college when you went to college? Build that out for us.
Yeah, so between that time b- I was going to high school, so I was doing everything in there. I was in so many different types of shows there. I was in the performing arts program. I did all of that. And then I went to college for a little bit, and I was also working at my family has a bakery in Brooklyn. So I was working there every day and doing that. And then eventually I was like, okay, ready for something new. So I was going to go to school to become like either a teacher or do something within the board of ed. So I ended up becoming a para, and I was working there for a while. But that was when I got diagnosed, was when I was working as the para. But between that time, yeah, I was working. I was just doing everything that like a normal teenager would be doing. Um, and then, like I said, I was working for the Board of Ed and I loved it. And then that kind of threw a wrench into my plans when all of this happened. But I always did the singing. But I was just young at the time. So like we didn't really know. Like I was always into the music, but I was doing more musical theater and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I got sick that I decided to like go a different route with the music.
Okay. And we will get there, I promise. So let's
Mhm.
let's talk about what your symptoms were before you were diagnosed, right? So you were diagnosed how long after you first started developing symptoms before your 23rd birthday or 23rd, when you were 23 and you were diagnosed? How long before the diagnosis were you symptomatic?
For almost 2 years, I would say around there.
All right, so between 21 and 23, you were sick.
Yes. Hmm.
Talk to us about what were your early symptoms and how did they develop before you were diagnosed?
Yeah, so everything just like kind of it was like a little bit out of a time, like a little bit at a time. Like at first it was like a lot of stomach issues. I just thought just I had like, normal, issues with my stomach, but it was just like was progressively like getting worse. And then I started getting really bad pains in my legs, and I thought that was because I was having issues with, with my stomach because I had lost a lot of weight in between that time. Um so we were like kind of like, all right, well maybe we're not getting enough nutrients, which is why I'm getting the pains in my legs. um so that went on for like a few months. I was going to see all these like different doctors, they all kind of just like couldn't figure out like what it was. I was getting some tests done, and they were like, well, you know what, maybe it's like a scleroderma type of thing, and which was a really scary diagnosis. They were like, because I just from a few of the blood tests it was kind of leaning towards that. They also were saying maybe it's MS, because I started having issues with my balance. Like I never fully lost the ability to walk when I was first diagnosed. But I had a lot of issues with my balance. I had a lot of issues with pain, and my hips would give out. So I would just like be like walking and my hip would give out and I'd randomly just go down. Um, and then finally, I had all these other doctor appointments set up because this one doctor had said, I have a feeling it might be this scleroderma. And I was sleeping one night. I woke up and I lost the vision in my eye. And I ran into my parents' room and I was just like, yeah, I was like, I don't want to freak you guys out, but I can't see. It was only one eye, but they, so then when that happened, my dad was like, "Oh, this has to be Lyme disease. There's no way." And so ended up, he got me right in the next day with his Lyme disease doctor, and that's how that came to be.
Okay. So, how many different doctors did you see between when you first started to be symptomatic at around 21 and then the time your father diagnosed you with Lyme disease? And we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
How many different doctors did you see?
I would say between like 4 and 5. Like we went to like a rheumatoid, a gastro. There was a few other like just like practitioners, infectious disease. I saw like quite a few. I would say between 4 or 5 doctors, and all of my tests kept coming back that there was something going on. They just couldn't pinpoint what it was, and so that was why like they were just like, oh well, it could be this, it could be that. Your blood work is showing this, but they just couldn't figure out what was putting it like all together. That's I would
So,
say
Marina,
around.
what are the problems with diagnosing somebody with Lyme disease is that most folks who have Lyme disease have migrating symptoms. They have an aching pain in one part of their body and then an aching pain in another part of their body. And as you were beginning to describe, first it was stomach, then it was legs, then it was hips.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a very typical pattern for Lyme disease where you have the migrating symptoms, right? And one of the challenges with having migrating symptoms is that it makes it difficult to diagnose if you're not Lyme literate and you don't recognize that migrating symptoms generally means Lyme disease, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's, and part of the problem we have, of course, is, we have this system of specialists where we go to one specialist who's looking at one symptom, another specialist is looking at another symptom, and, so you go to 4 or 5 of them and everyone's looking at their own, looking through their own prism and nobody's putting it together and seeing that
Yeah.
it is a typical presentation of Lyme disease, right? So, and of course, that results in many doctors not doing what your doctors did, which is said there's something wrong, but we don't know what. Most doctors will
Yeah.
say there's nothing wrong with you, it's all in your head, right?
Yeah.
Which becomes more paralyzing to, stay with our theme. So, did any of the 4 doctors or 5 doctors you went to see, did any of them suggest to you that there really was nothing wrong with you physically, but that this was in your head, or was everybody pretty consistently tracking with there's something wrong, we see something, we just don't know what it is?
Um, I don't know if so much they were like, this is totally in your head just because, like I said, they were seeing testing, like the tests, like the results, but they really more just couldn't like pinpoint what it was. I actually though did have a doctor pretty recently, I would say like a few months back before they figured out what was going on now. He did say like with my walking, he was like, well, could you be stressed? And I'm like, listen, if I'm that stressed that I can't walk, I'm like, we have a serious problem here. And it ended, I mean, like I mean, that wasn't true, but it was just such an odd like thing to say to me. I was like, but yeah, I mean, I totally get that. A lot of doctors I feel like I feel like they gaslight you to just be like, oh, this is just stress and it's in your head. And it's like when you see like actual physical symptoms, like how could that even be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, you could be psychosomatically symptomatic, right? I mean, yeah, I
Oh, of
mean
course.
that is certainly something that is possible. But of course, generally, what doctors are, what it's all in your head really is code for a doctor saying, "I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to have an answer. I don't have an answer, so therefore I have to blame someone else," right? I mean, that's really what,
Yeah.
what they're saying. So, but it seems like you didn't have a whole lot of that. Well, thankfully, you had good folks who were saying, very humbly, there's something here. I don't know what it is. We have to try to figure it out, right? But
Yeah.
it really wasn't until somebody with Lyme disease recognized a symptom that ultimately got you a diagnosis, right? And that's something that we
Yes.
typically see in our podcast, right? One of our favorite guests is a woman named Phyllis Bedford, and Phyllis Bedford is really well known for the Limelight Foundation, right? And
Yes.
and
Hmm.
um, and one of the things that Phyllis shared with us when we interviewed her, one of the couple of times we interviewed her, was that she calls Lyme disease the supermarket disease because you're more likely to be diagnosed in the supermarket by someone or either someone who has Lyme disease or a family member of someone who has Lyme disease than you are in a doctor's office, right? And that's what happened with you.
Yes.
You were really diagnosed by your dad,
Yeah.
and because yeah, your dad was familiar with the symptoms, your diagnosis was finally possible because you then went to a Lyme literate doctor, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because I did go to a rheumatoid, and they did do some type of Lyme disease test, but it wasn't the Western blot. So when it came back like false positive, or I don't know what they say with it, but they were just saying, they were like, no, it doesn't look like you have it. So, which I found out later that that doesn't mean anything until you go for the actual Western blot test.
It sure doesn't. So Matt's going to now take you through the next phase of our conversation, but just give me your reaction when you finally were diagnosed with Lyme disease. Um, what was your reaction to that? And did you think that perhaps you were more vulnerable to Lyme disease because you had the autoimmune disease during your childhood, and perhaps that made you more vulnerable to the disease?
Yes. So when I was first diagnosed, I honestly was a little like, it sounds crazy, but like I was a little relieved because I feel like it just meant that like I finally got an answer, because it was just it was just taking everything out of me for those years, just trying to figure out what it was. So I was definitely relieved. Um, and then I'm sorry, what was the second part to the question? I'm so sorry.
Rich, you want to finish it up? Okay, I
Yeah,
think I want to.
but the second part of the question was, did your brain automatically take you back to that place where you thought perhaps you were more vulnerable to the disease because you had the autoimmune disease? Meaning, was there, even if it wasn't causing a relapse of the autoimmune disease, do you think it made you more vulnerable and therefore more likely to get Lyme disease?
I do. I feel like with autoimmunes, they're kind of all connected in a way. Like I feel like if I think my body was already weak with like I already had the issue with my legs, and I feel like it just like where they say with the first illness that I had, like it basically goes off of your weakest part of your body, which I feel like was my walking. So I feel like the same thing happened with Lyme disease, and which is why the Lyme disease attacked my legs, because it was already, it was already a weak, a weaker part of my body. So,
Right.
I do believe that
So,
that's
Marina, one of the things that we teach here at Take Boot Camp is that the likelihood of getting Lyme disease is formulaic, right? It's threat times vulnerability equals the risk, right? And in most cases, when somebody is getting sick from Lyme disease, because we as humans have been coming in contact with Lyme disease as long as we have existed, right?
yeah.
People have been getting bitten by ticks as long as there are people, Dr. Roll says in his book Unlocking Lyme, right? And we agree with that, right? So
Yes.
we do have some immune protections built into us to defend us from Lyme disease because we've come in contact with it, over millions of years. The problem, of course, is that we will get sick and certainly chronically ill if we are vulnerable. And so the reason I'm asking you the question is, I'm wondering where your brain took you when you got the diagnosis. Was it, wow, this caused me to have a relapse of my prior autoimmune condition, or was it, wow, my autoimmune condition made me more vulnerable and that's why I'm sick, or something else?
Yeah, I feel like I definitely thought like, that the autoimmune, it made me like susceptible to it, because I already had that, and I just feel like that's how I just took it, was that had, Lyme disease works like that. Anytime you have like an autoimmune, you're susceptible to all these other, like opens the door to all these other types of autoimmunes.
Yeah, and hearing your story, Marina, it's so similar to mine in regards to so many things. The first one being that you had this autoimmune predisposition or background before getting infected with Lyme, which is why I think it was so much more severe in you than other people, right? And I think that was
Yeah.
true of myself as well. So, when I first got diagnosed with Lyme disease, being here in New York like you are, I didn't really fully understand the scope and the severity of Lyme. Did you? Because to me, I was like shocked. I'm like, Lyme disease can cause these crippling symptoms. And again, we shared a lot of these severe symptoms. So where was
Yeah.
your head at when you got the diagnosis?
Yeah, I definitely didn't realize that it would be like that severe. I did understand because my dad had the eye, when he lost his vision, but I don't remember it being as severe with like the fatigue and and all of that. Like he didn't have any issues with his legs. Although now when we do talk about it, I was very young when he was diagnosed, so I don't remember much about that time. But he does say, he was like, still today, like he was like, I do have my days where like I do feel like it still wipes me out and everything. But I definitely was not aware, because I've heard of other people getting it, and I've heard that they've had issues with like their joints and like their knees and like all of this stuff, and it being like like very hard for them. But I don't think anybody like prepared me for how difficult it actually was, and it just made me have a whole new lookout on like the whole entire illness in a whole.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just trying to identify patterns, right? Because we've interviewed thousands of people, both on and off this podcast, and
Yeah.
well over 600 now officially on this podcast. And some of the patterns I see, another one is that I'm seeing in you is when you're go, 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 you're this extrovert and you just
Yeah.
have this get it done mentality. And I was the same way, and a lot of us are. And then you have a harder crash. So do you think that, like, I feel like there's so many patterns here that we're building together, so it's interesting on that end. And then also being in the athletic side, you said you were an avid runner. I know you mentioned earlier with Rich as well, and you'd run miles every single day for fun. And I did the
Yeah.
same. So, then we've had people on the podcast talk to us about over exercising and how it can actually weaken your immune system and how it can actually hurt you and make you more susceptible. So I wonder if you've thought about that as well, kind of looking back at your crash and your illness, when you were 23 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I do also believe that like um I feel like, because I was, like you just said, like such like an extrovert. I was always go, go, go all of the time. I do think it made me more susceptible to it. Because I just feel like you do hear a lot of times that people that, have all of this like stress and everything. And I was somebody that like I would do a lot, but I also wanted to be like perfect in everything I did. And I put so much effort into every single type of thing I did throughout my day. So I feel like, with the stress of that, and the exercising and, trying to be perfect with the exercising and all of that, like, I definitely think it played a part into it because I feel like I did it, I would overrun myself. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah, no,
I
you're
would,
right.
I would overdo it all the time, basically.
Yeah, no, but I think that's a huge thing. You put a lot of pressure on yourself, and that pressure builds up, and then it takes a physical toll on your body because you're pushing yourself probably when more than you should be physically.
Yeah.
It's pressure on yourself mentally because you're putting too much pressure on yourself in that regard. And again, I'm speaking from shared experiences here, so I just
Yeah.
try to identify patterns to help other people reflect back, and even people that hopefully are listening to this podcast that aren't sick of Lyme to have these warning signs and things that they can maybe reflect on to see if they have these type of things that can make Lyme worse for them, right? Now,
Absolutely.
when you got diagnosed and you had this epiphany that is Lyme disease, I'm curious, did you realize what kind of, and again with your father, I guess it's different, but what kind of treatment did your dad get, and then how did you decide to get treated with your your primary care doctor at the time?
Yes. So my dad got the IV antibiotics. But he did it for 30 days, I remember. He did it for 30 days, and after that, like his eyesight came back and he was, pretty much back to normal for the most part. So he brought me to the same doctor. And when we went there, like he decided that, the IV antibiotic would be like the best course of treatment as well. So I ended up with a PICC line, and I was on it for about 18 months. Um, until, for the most, my eyesight came back maybe like 3 months in, but all the other symptoms kind of lingered. So we just kept going, to overtreat it. And then after that, like, for the most part, I was sort of back to normal. I still had issues with my legs, but I was walking and, doing all of that.
Yes, I'm curious, where are you at when it comes to your personal life? Because 23 is such an important age in life. Are you working? Are you in school? What's your personal life like, and how is it impacting your ability to function in a normal way when you're so sick and you have an IV PICC line in your body, which is a sensitive thing attached to your arm and to your heart?
Yeah, so that was very difficult to navigate, because so I was working in a school system, and I would have to, I had to, keep the port, clean and everything, and it was a little difficult. I ended up having to leave the board of ed because of that, because it was just too high of a risk. So that, that didn't feel too good. And also too, like, going out with friends, because I was, like I said, I was young. I was all about that. And I just ended up like I couldn't really do much because I had to, make sure that, I was being safe about everything I was doing with the PICC line.
How was it socially? Because 23, you still probably have a ton of friends. You're an extrovert. You're going out. Did it change? Did people start dropping off? Did relationships kind of come in a different way? Because I feel like with your personality, you probably had everybody just attracted to you. And I think when you get sick, sometimes people that aren't that close or that are more not ride or dies drop off and kind of, aren't there when you need them the most. I'm curious if that was your experience as well, similar to others.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, I had a lot of friends and a lot of acquaintances, and I really got to see who my true friends were with all of this. Because I mean, like, as much as, like, people are nice to you to your face, but then I would hear things like, because I would have, like, don't get me wrong, I would have like some good days where I would try to go out and I would do things. I would take pictures and I would post them. But then, like, other times, like, I just couldn't do anything because I felt so sick. So I would hear things like, oh, well, she's too sick to do this, but, she was out the other, she was pictures of her out and about the other day, and she was, oh, she wasn't sick enough to do that. So, yeah, I mean, people really didn't understand it. Like, they don't get that. Like, it's kind of a day-to-day thing. Or not even say a day-to-day thing. I mean, because I do feel like most of us do feel symptoms or feel a certain way. Like, like our baseline of feeling good is like different now. Like, you
Yeah.
kind of just learn how to deal with it. But some days are worse than others. And I just feel like people just can't understand that. And I definitely lost friends during that time. But I also, my circle became smaller, and now I just have my friends and my family that are there for me no matter how I'm feeling.
I'm going to give you a couple hypothetical questions as a result of that conversation.
Yep.
So if you and I met up again, and we're in the city, I'm there with Rich, and you're there with your family and friends, and somebody's there, and you hear somebody saying to me, "Hey, Matt, I don't understand. You're here, you're looking great, but I don't understand. How can you be so well and then so sick the next day?" And is saying those same things to me, knowing what you know now and being mature and growing and learning what you've learned about this chronic illness, how would you respond to that person in defense of me? Because I think a lot of people listening to this podcast need to know, what's the proper way to communicate that? Because it's such a common thing we hear in this podcast where their friends, their family members, their employers make these kind of comments because they can't understand and they don't get it. And I think it's important to have people that are further along in their journey, like yourself, help guide people in how to communicate and respond to those things that are earlier on in their journeys.
No, absolutely. I mean, I would just say to them, like, you need to, I think you not to, I don't want to sound like mean, but, like, you have to, be a little more open-minded and educate yourself a little bit more on, how this illness works. That, it's different between everyone. You could have, a friend or a neighbor or whatever tell you that, they have it, but, like, they're fine. Because I find that people say it all the time. They're like, oh, well, so and so has this and they don't have any of those issues. But that's the thing about this illness, is that, every person is different. So I would definitely tell them, be like, I think you need to, learn more about it, do your research, because it doesn't, we could, yesterday he could have been, he couldn't get out of bed, and, but today he's feeling better. So he's going to take the time when he feels better to go out and, try to live his life as, the best he can.
Yeah, what kind of advice would you give a patient who is in that journey as well? Because it's so confusing. And I think you hit it on the head where, like, you can go out and actually have a good time. Your baseline is different, but you can actually feel good enough to go out. But then there are times when you're debilitated and bedbound and can barely make it to the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
So what advice would you give somebody who's brand new to this and not knowing how to make heads or tails of it and just struggling with the extreme ups and downs of a chronic Lyme experience?
Yeah, I would just tell them to give themselves grace and to, um, take the time. Like, when they're feeling really bad, it's okay. You don't, I know it could feel very depressing. So if you're feeling horrible, it's okay. Just do what you need to do to make yourself feel better. And on the good days, try to push yourself a little bit to, lighten it up. And I just say all the time, you got to take it day by day. Like, this is not, it's not a marathon. Just little strides, small victories. Even if, like, if you're having, some people, like I said, you can't get out of bed. If you're feeling a little better and you're out of bed that day and you get dressed and you just go and, you sit in your living room, that's a small victory to some people. So I always say small victories and take it day by day.
Yeah, Marina, as Rich was noted before, there's a physical and there's the emotional component to this. And I want to be clear because I know so many people are told it's all in their head and they're crazy and it's just there's nothing really going on with them, which is not true, right? Lyme
Yeah.
disease is a physical illness.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, when we talk about chronic Lyme, it's not just Borrelia burgdorferi, it's not just that one pathogen or bacteria, it's many other things and viruses that are just crippling the body and crippling the immune system. So that is 100% valid. But there is an emotional component. And Rich used to trigger me about this all the time early on in our PICC bootcamp experience together, because I would get so defensive that there's no emotional component. It's not in my head. There's no mental health piece to it. It's only physical. But that's not true. I was triggered because I was dismissed by so many people, but it is an important component. So now I've had that epiphany, and I think you kind of have that idea as well. How would you better articulate that than I just did to people listening to this podcast, so they understand it is a real physical disease, but the mental health component and the emotional component is really important, and it is a factor to allowing yourself to heal more expeditiously rather than slowing down and inhibiting a healing journey.
No, absolutely. So, you know, the way that my doctor, like he like when I went to my Lyme literate doctor, like the first thing he said was like, listen, like anything that like you're thinking in your head or the way like you're feeling, he goes, it absolutely affects like all of those, those triggers like in your brain. He was like, so he was like, I don't want you to think that, you are making this up, this and that, like all the feelings you have are, are real. Like, and he said like depression goes along with Lyme disease a lot of the times. And then like once you start getting better and everything, and and it's not depression because of not feeling good. I mean, of course, that comes along with it as well, because I've experienced that. But there is like types of depression that could come in because the Lyme is actually affecting your brain like in that way. So
Yeah.
um yeah, that's
Yeah, I think you hit on the head, right? Who wouldn't get depressed or feel a little down when they're so physically unwell? But then to your other point,
100%.
the Lyme will actually infect the brain. And we've had a ton of, for people who want to learn more about the science, to have that kind of backup from researchers, scientists, and doctors, they should check out our website, tickbootcamp.com, because we have a doctor's page and a researcher's page where we interview those types of specialists. And we cite specific, studies that are published on, the National Institute of Health website that talk about how when Lyme infects the brain, it causes these psychological problems like depression and anxiety. And they even talk about how and what it does to the brain and the neural pathways. But that's just a byproduct of the infection in many cases, right? In most cases.
Yes.
And even if it
Yep.
attaches to the vagus nerve, but it doesn't get into the brain, there's so many different examples as to how it affects your mental health. But it is multifaceted. It's not just physical, but the root is these pathogens that have to be addressed in coordination with the immune system. So I think you said that very well. Now, bigger question is, when you were early on, did you have this big picture knowledge, or was it something that you had to acquire over the last 10 years of going through the journey?
No, it's something I had to acquire. It's been from not just doctors, but talking with other people that also have the illness. I learned like a lot just over the years doing my own research, just being a part of a lot of like, Lyme disease, like groups and all of that. I really had to do my own research to like figure a lot of this out. I mean, I very luckily had a great Lyme doctor. And he taught me so much about it. But I just feel like I learned, as the years went on, I learned more and more about it.
Marina, are you comfortable sharing your Lyme doctor's name?
Um, yeah, I don't know if he still practices anymore. He was older, but it was Dr. Pollack, his name was. He was with NYU.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now, when you talk about Lyme groups, I'm curious, being in New York, obviously we have Generation Lyme, who started as in-person meetups and then went online. Did you ever have any contact with the Generation Lyme folks, like Brooke Stoddard or any of those guys?
Generation Lyme.
Well, we talked about Jesse Rubin when I met you in person. Jesse's a part of the Generation Lyme, leadership over there. So they do their meetups, their support groups. I'm just curious if you guys ever cross paths, being New Yorkers and in the community.
No, so I might have. You know what? I honestly can't remember if I did anything with Generation Lyme. I know I did something with Lyme Light, and I think it was and the Global Lyme Alliance. That's actually where I met Jesse Rubin. Um, I was awarded the Starlight Award from the Global Lyme Alliance, and I performed Paralyzed. And then the next year I went back, and that's where I actually met Jesse.
Oh, small world, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Limelight, they're fantastic. So
Yes.
Christina Kovacs is a big part of Limelight with Phyllis Bedford, and she's
Yes.
the one who got the in New York City the Fashion Week that happened last year, and
I saw
that
that.
was all because of Christina, and she's very heavily involved in Limelight with Phyllis. And then on the global Lyme front, yeah, another great group. So a lot of great New York based Lyme groups where we are. So
Absolutely.
now, The next question I have for you is when you're getting your treatment, I mean, look, when I got my PICC line put in, I didn't realize I have to put this x-ray machine over you and they have to navigate it up. And that in itself is kind of a traumatic experience. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what was it like from the time they put the PICC line in and then getting your treatments? Because for me, I didn't understand what a Herx was. And boy, oh boy, did I feel much worse when I started getting the treatment. So I'm just curious where that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a bit of a shock, like the first few times, like I had like the hercs and everything like that. But yeah, it was interesting. It was so long ago, but yeah, I was definitely nervous about it. I remember and having that whole thing put in. But uh luckily, I mean, I did pretty well with the pick line. The only issue I really had every so often was like my stitches would come out and I would have to like go back and they would have to like re-stitch it up for me. But the issue though, honestly though, with being on it was that um I would get really sick sometimes, like depending on when I would give myself the dose. Um and they like I would have like the herks, but just like every day, like I would not feel great like after taking it. But other than that, for the most part, I was pretty good, and I kind of just got like used. I got used to it. I mean, again, I was younger, so I just feel like now I feel like I get sick and I'm a big baby. But like back then, like I feel like I just took whatever it was and I was like, I'll be fine. Like I'm just gonna do this, and that's so I was okay. I was okay. Yeah. I think you're
Yep, I am muted.
sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So good catch. I saw you looking at me. Uh-oh. So was there anything else that you were doing in addition to the IV antibiotics? Because oftentimes we hear about supplements, we hear about herbs, we hear about, it could even be as simple as a probiotic or, diet, sleep, nervous system regulation, anything like that.
Yeah, so I was doing I was definitely doing the probiotics. I was doing that and something else to help with the possibly getting gallstones, which that didn't help. I ended up with my gallbladder out because of it. But yeah, I was doing that. I was doing physical therapy for my legs. Um, and that was really the protocol at that time.
God, I'm curious what your thoughts are on physical therapy for Lyme patients because, again, there's a lot of parallels in our experiences. I had physical therapy when I first got diagnosed, and I had a lot of issues with my neck and my back and inflammation and body pain. And what happened, Marina, is I got a lot worse. They did an hour
Mhm.
session, they did stim, they did adjustments, they did a lot of things. But I think I was just so sick and so toxic, and I was getting treatment that it overwhelmed my system with even more toxins, and it set me back months in my healing journey. But then once I got a little bit better and I did it again and had a little bit more, more health in my side, it was greatly beneficial in my healing. So I'm curious
Yes.
where you landed in that regard.
Yeah, that was the same for me. I when I first got diagnosed, it was like towards like the summer, and so not only was it difficult with the physical therapy, but like days that it was like super hot out, like I just couldn't move at all, and I ended up missing like my physical therapy appointments. Like I was supposed to go like 3 times a week. I would maybe go once, if that, and it was because it took everything out of me whenever I would go to these appointments. So it really didn't do much for me in the beginning, but sort of like you, like, as like the months went on and I was getting better, then I was able to go back and like help like rebuild my strength.
You mentioned the heat. So I'm curious, were you heat intolerant as well? Were
Yeah,
you flaring from the heat?
very bad. I still do.
Is there any tips or tricks you have that you can recommend to people that you found that help you when, it's hot outside and you're trying to go out and push yourself that allow you to overcome the, reaction to the heat?
Um, I honestly on really for like days like that, I try to just do anything I can like indoors for the most part and not like put myself out there for that. Just because I do react like so severely to it. So I would say just if you can avoid, avoid it. I don't really know. It's something I'm still kind of trying to figure out because I just when I know it's going to be like super hot like that, I just stay in because it's just not good for me.
Yeah, and I think when you're sensitive to it, your advice is very sound because when you're in that position still, you don't want to go and be exposed and then have even worse symptoms, and then it's going to take even longer for you to work towards healing because you're setting yourself back. So I think you have to read
Exactly.
your body, which is the most important thing. Listen to your body signals, and then determine where am I at, and can I try to push a little bit? And if so, let's try it. If not, let's wait until I can get to that point.
Yes.
Now, what made you decide to do, I think you said 18 months? Is that what you said for
Yeah.
antibiotics? Okay.
Hmm.
When did you decide with your doctor to stop taking the antibiotics? And what was your health like at that time?
So, um, I, for the most part, I mean, I still wasn't feeling 100%, but I just feel like the antibiotics in general were taking a toll on my body. And it was getting to the point where I just felt like I was just feeling like really just so sick from taking it. And I just said to him, I'm like, listen, I'm like, maybe we should just look into taking a break. And he did agree. He was like, you know what? He was like, let's take you off. You've been on it for a while. He goes, let's give your body like a few months to see like where you're at. And just continue. Like at that time, like I was trying to get back to the physical therapy and stuff. He was like, let's do that and let's just see what happens. But we ultimately we went off of it because my eyesight at the time did come back. So, that was good. I was maybe having like the pains in my legs weren't as bad. The falling wasn't as bad. It was still there, but we felt like the physical therapy was going to help with that. Um, but it was just, I was on it for so long that I was like, I feel like I just need a reset. And so we just agreed that, it was time to stop and we just made the decision.
Hmm. Now, how is this affecting you again socially? 'Cause now you're 18 months in, and now I have to touch on some of the people that I got to meet in person. One of the first persons I'm going to kind of touch on what Rich touched on. For everybody listening, I met you, Marina, at Nicole O'Donnell's book launch in New York City. And I've never met Nicole in person. I was in her book and
Mhm.
we chatted online. So I go there and I know nobody except Krista. She's the only person I knew. So I'm
Yeah.
going around introducing myself to everybody. Hi, I'm Matt. Who are you? Hi, I'm Matt. Who are you? And one of the first people I introduced myself to was, and I wish I can't remember their names, your friend who was the nurse. Very nice woman. You and I, and then
Uh,
she introduced me to you, and it was right at the
yes.
bar. Oh man, I can't remember her name. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. She was right there. And
Yes.
what a fantastic person. I mean, she's like, I'm here supporting my friend, and that's how I met you. And she was just glowing to say how proud she was of you, right? And then
Yes.
and then I met your other friend, the young man who I think runs the gym or owns the gym, the boxing
Yes,
gym,
Sal.
right?
Yep. Hmm.
Sal,
Hmm.
and another guy who was just glowing like a true ride or die friend. And I'm like, man, this girl Marina has a really good friend circle. She's here with her team, right? Her crew. So it's cool to see that you have some strong friends still to this day that were with you through it. But was that still the case back then? I mean, were these some of the few people left at that time? Because now you're 18 months into an illness, and I have to imagine that's got to take a toll on your social relationships.
Oh yeah. I mean, so as far as them, I actually met them um a few years later. I ended up going to my friend Sal's gym because my balance was still very off. And I had read that boxing is like good to help with balance. So I found, this gym and it says, I was like, let me just try it out the boxing. And that's how I ended up meeting him and then meeting all the people at the gym. And they've been nothing but supportive like throughout throughout the whole entire thing. um as far as back then, like I had a very small friend group because I did lose a lot of friends throughout like those 18 months, but I still had a lot of support then and there. But this new support that I have has been amazing because just they didn't know it, they didn't know me all the way back then, but they still like have supported my journey. And that was also how I met Nicole, because she was diagnosed around the same time that I ended up going to this gym, and then Sal introduced us both, so we were there to like support each other as well.
Oh wow, what a small world! I mean,
Yeah,
what a perfect blend of everybody to come together to help each other and support each other. Now,
absolutely.
that on that note, did the boxing help? I'm curious because balance is a key issue for a lot of Lyme patients. Myself
Yeah,
included. I tease where I'm wobbly. So
yeah.
was it a helpful tactic? I mean, obviously it's good to get exercise if you're able to, but tell us what that was like for you and if you think it's worthwhile for us to try in the Lyme community.
I mean, I definitely think it was. Just because you do like, so because you're not just boxing, like you're doing other things to help with like, with the balance. So like we're doing like different like types of exercises. And he also understood that, I'm not coming in here just to like become like a boxer. Like I'm using it primarily to help with my balance. So I honestly, we just did a lot of like, different types of exercises. And just even just like when you are throwing punches and all of that and the coordination, like kind of takes your mind off of focusing on balancing. And it just kind of came with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just like
It
it all went
does.
together. Yeah.
It does. I mean, you're building strength. You're building a
Hmm.
community because gyms are communities and families, especially that one. I mean, it's very clear. So
Yeah.
you're strengthening your body, you're building a community, you're getting more confident in your body's ability to move past this illness. So I think there's multiple benefits of doing things like that. And I think it's something that you have to be ready for because you couldn't have done that, I'm
Yes.
sure, earlier on because you were so unwell. But when you
Absolutely not.
and that's why
Yeah.
you got to push yourself, right, Marina? Because you
Yeah.
said if you just stay where you are, you're never going to grow. So you got to little by little push and see, okay, that was too much. Let me pull back. Okay, that was enough. I can
Yep.
do that. I'm feeling good enough. And when you look back, you realize, wow, I've come a long way. And you keep doing that your whole life. And eventually, when you
Yes.
look back, even when you consider yourself quote unquote healthy, it's a good
Yeah.
approach to take in life. So I mean, is there anything else you've done in addition to the antibiotics to treat any other, even little things, right? Whether it's just sleep recommendations, diet recommendations, whether it is social recommendations. I mean, like I'll give you such a silly example, right? One of the things I get caught up on sometimes is like I'll call being a negative Nancy, right? I'll be like at work and I get caught up in the drama, and I'm like, nope, Matt, what's wrong with you? Stop that. It's not good for you, right? It's not good for your mental
Yeah.
health. It's not good for your physical health. So all around, I think that's something that like I try to be positive and optimistic because it really does matter and it does help you even if you're catching a cold or you're exposed to something. And it's such a little thing, but for me, I just think it's an important thing I try to do in my everyday life. So nothing's
Yeah.
too small. Anything else you want to share that you've done to help you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say, just like you, the positiveness. I have to because I'm somebody that could, like, and I wasn't like this before I got diagnosed with the Lyme, but I am somebody now that could get really down on myself and look at the negative side of everything. So for me personally, like I always have to look at the positive side because if I don't, like, I will go down like that rabbit hole if I don't. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say that. I try to, eat better. I do feel like when I'm not like watching so much what I'm eating, it will have an effect on like how I'm feeling. Like I'll be more tired, I'll be more irritable. So I mean, I try. I'm not the best at it, but I when I can, I try to pay like more attention to that. Um, I do believe in my supplements that I take. I do feel like they help a lot. Um, I mean, I really feel like just like that, and for me personally, just my music, that I kind of just lean on that just to help me mentally get get through it. You know.
So could you tell us a little bit more about your diet specifically? Because I'll tell you, for me, a high protein diet and a low carb and a low sugar diet has been transformational. So I'm just curious, like what helped you on a diet standpoint that's really keeping you in alignment with what you feel your body needs with, dealing with Lyme disease?
I would say same. Like I try to do like low carbs and like because sugar really does mess with me, which is hard because I definitely have a sweet tooth. Like I could eat candy all day long. So I definitely struggle with that a little bit. But the days that I don't and I'm very strict about it, I definitely find a difference in like my energy and and also just like pain wise. I mean, I'll find there are days that like if I don't eat the way I need to, I'll wake up and I'll just like, my joints will be in pain or stuff like that. So I try to really pay attention to all of that.
What about supplements? Do you know what kind of supplements specifically you're taking? And I don't want to get too into the weeds if they're herbs or whatever. I'm just curious though what you're
No,
taking.
I don't do anything too like, too like intricate. Like I'm very big just with like my vitamin C, elderberry. Um, I've been taking it's called L-theanine, which helps a lot.
What does that help
Trying
with? I think is it L-theanine? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I said that wrong. Yeah.
Because that helps
Yeah.
me greatly with sleep and calm. I'm curious how it helps you.
Yes, that's exactly what I take it for, just to like help to keep me like I feel like it helps like keep me level. Um so I take that. But I honestly I swear by the vitamin C and the elderberry. I feel like that helps me like it helps me I feel like I don't get sick as much. Like it helps my immune system. Like knocking on wood, like hopefully I don't get sick. But I feel like that definitely boosts my immune system to, make sure I don't because that's my biggest fear in all of this is getting sick because I feel
Yeah.
like once I get sick, it just it spirals from there.
Yeah, and look, I can relate to that fear, and Rich can tell you better than anybody. I mean, he's known me at my worst, and I mean, especially during COVID, right? I was really unwell during COVID, and it's scary, and it's something that I think actually hurts you when in your immune system because that fear weakens your immune system and makes you more susceptible to becoming sick. And the thing that I think is most important is, look, you can get to a point where you don't have to worry about it. And candidly, I think sometimes it's almost like a post traumatic stress disorder response, like a PTSD response, where it's something we have to work towards and try to process because it's an unhealthy response to being so unwell. And
Yeah,
that was the case for me. So I'm not trying to, but I think, I think it's something that over time your body becomes stronger and more resilient. And you get sick, so what? You're sick for a couple of days. You get to, you lay in bed with the flu, and then you get up and you move on, right? Maybe it takes a little bit
exactly.
longer, but you're never going to be what you were from catching a bug from somebody. And I think that's an important message for people that are where you are, Marina, right? Because if you're really in
Yeah,
a bad place, that's not true for everybody. But where you are, that's not going to be the case for you. Now, Rich and I have come up with this framework for healing. So because we've interviewed so many people, and because I've used this framework in my own healing journey, and it's something we've kind of just stumbled upon, I want to share it with you and see what your thoughts are.
yeah,
Because we broke it up to 4 parts. We call it PARM, because we're Italian, and you can hopefully appreciate this Parmesan, so we call it PARM. And it's prehab, assist, rehab, and then maintain, right? So the prehab is really just getting your body ready to be treated. Because when I got treated, it sounds like you as well, we had severe Herxheimer reactions from the IV antibiotics. And there's a lot we could have done, and I could have done specifically to get my body ready to be prepared for the aggressive treatment, which is more on the A side, the assist the immune system in killing the microbes.
yeah,
Build up your immune system, build up your ability to detox, get your lymph moving, counter the gut damage from the antibiotics, and counter all of that stuff with these natural supplements. But I didn't do that. And in hindsight, I wish I did, right? That's more the prehab and get your body ready. The assist side is really getting rid of the microbes, whether it's taking the antibiotics, whether it's herbal antibiotics, whether it's ivermectin for the antivirals, whether it's an antiviral medication. It's really helping your body and your immune system support the reduction and the kill off of these microbes. And then after that, what we call the R is the rehab, because as we both know, your body has a lot of damage from the infections and from the illness, and it's rebuilding your
yes,
body, whether that means going to taking boxing and strengthening your body, or getting yourself, for me, I had to get myself walking again. I couldn't walk more than a few houses, and like you, I was a 10 mile an hour, a 10 mile an hour, I was a 10 mile a
yeah,
day runner, right?
yeah,
And I had to get myself just walking again to be able to get to run again. So you have to rebuild and repair your body. And there's
yes,
that's movement, that's continuing to take other supplements to kind of repair your immune system, and the maintenance, which is a lifelong effort to maintain your health. And those are the things you're talking about, right? Being optimistic, being positive. It's
absolutely.
making sure you get good sleep. It's taking the L-theanine to keep yourself calm and not overwhelmed from that standpoint. There's a whole bunch of things that fall into these categories, and we're going to start to document them, Rich and I, based on all the things we've taken and learned from doctors and researchers to kind of better organize this. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on our approach, the Palm approach.
No, I think, yeah. I mean, I think you said it all. Like, that's really what it is. It's, all these little things, and then, eventually at the end, like, you got to just, rehab it back up. And um no, I absolutely, I think that's a good way to approach it for sure.
Yeah. So if I had to ask you, but I'm gonna hand it back to Rich because I know we're getting tight on time here. But if I had to ask
Yeah.
you a question, this is a fun one. If somebody listening to this podcast said, "Hey, I'm brand new to Lyme. You guys are scaring the crap out of me. I didn't realize what I'm in for, and this seems I'm really scared. I don't know what to do." What would your advice be to that person? A quick little response to give them some confidence, reassurance, and let them know that it's okay and they're going to be able to get through it, despite it being, yes, it's an awful disease, yes, it's a horrible disease. But how would you give them hope and inspiration at the beginning of this journey?
I would just tell them that it's going to get better. It's going to get better. You just need to like take your time. You have to go for your treatments that, that you need to do. Um, you just really have to stay positive throughout the whole thing. And like I said, take it a day at a time. If you're going to have a bad day, you have the bad day. And then the days that you're good, push yourself, but it will be okay. You'll learn how to navigate it.
So Marina, let's talk about how this experience was important for you to find out who you really are, right? To help you to find your true identity, because you did tease that a little bit earlier when you talked about how music was a part of your life before you got sick, but then it became your life. How it was something that you would sort of dabble in and you would enjoy as part of, some of the enriching experiences that you had in high school where you were a part of music theater, but then it really became a very different part of your life. So talk about how the Lyme disease journey helped you to see who you were, what God made you, how God made you, and what He made you to do.
Um, I would say it just showed me that I really could do anything that, doesn't matter the obstacles and struggles that that I had. I think, like I said with the music before that, it definitely like it made me realize that I wanted to pursue a recording artist's career and write music, singer, I would say record, like singer songwriting career versus when I was doing Broadway when I was younger. But I think it, in a way, I feel like it definitely, it made me stronger as a person, because I learned that, like, no matter what I was going through, that I can do it. And I just feel like in everyday life, like today, like, I'm just like, all right, well, I went through this. So, like, anything I have coming my way, like, I'll just figure it out. I feel like it's helped me, like, figure out, like, thinking wise, like, to not second guess myself, to go with, like, my gut feelings on everything. And also just to, like, be there. I feel like it's made me want to, like, help and be there for people. Like, I feel like I'm very passionate about, like, Lyme disease and bringing awareness, but I just think in general, like, I would just, I like to advocate for, like, people that are going through anything that's, like, difficult like this, because I just feel like there's not many people out there that could do that, because it's just, you see all on social media, like, people just don't understand, like, any of this. Um so I feel like, it definitely pushed me to, like, want to, be there for other people and advocate for these illnesses. And if I could do that with my music, through my music, like, that's what I feel like my platform is there for.
It is certainly a platform, and so one of the patterns we've seen with other people who are actors and singers is that initially, before they were sick and they were pursuing the arts, it was really because they were attracted to the bright lights and the glamour and the glamorous people, and it was really about them when they were pursuing it in their early life. And then what happens when they go on the Lyme disease journey? It becomes about everyone else, and it becomes about being a platform to serve other people, and it becomes now a spiritual experience, right? So is that the same thing? I mean, we were sort of developing that before I asked you the question, but it seems like that's what was happening with you, right? I mean, you are somebody who looks like somebody who would be an actor or an actress. You look like someone who would be a professional singer. You clearly have this talent, but it really was about you before you got sick, right? And now it's about everyone else and how you use all of these gifts that God has given you, whether it be your voice or your writing ability or even your appearance, as a way of getting attention to this disease and helping other people.
Yes, no, I use that song to, like, hope, for myself, to help me to, like, get through that really, like, difficult time with, all of that. But I ended up in the long run being like, I really wrote this for anyone that's going, through this, this hard, difficult time, no matter what it is.
So one of the biggest challenges that folks have when they're on the Lyme disease journey is not only the loss of identity that we had talked about and how you can now rediscover your identity, but you can rediscover your identity, or not, I shouldn't say rediscover, but really discover for the first time your true identity because of the suffering, right? Because suffering teaches us lessons. It teaches us lessons that we can't learn any other way. And it teaches us lessons at a very early age. I mean, you're a very young woman, right? And but you're very wise and and you are very healthy spiritually because of this experience. And one of the things that I want you to talk about, because this is really important for folks, right? They need to know that there's a purpose to the suffering. They need to know that at the end of this journey, they're not going to want to have given it up, right?
Yes.
Talk about that piece of it, because you cannot heal if you just stuck in the suffering and you can't find any purpose for the suffering. But you can heal and you can have an expression of your nervous system that will allow you to be in a state of healing if you understand that there's a purpose all of this. So help us with that, Marina.
Yeah, so I feel like, because of all of this, it's just has taught me to, not worry about, like, the little things, and also realize, like, kind of like how lucky I am also, and not take, for granted, like, the little things. Um, like I said, just walking right now, like, I mean, I feel like I never thought that that was going to be an issue. Just waking up and, like, feeling good, and not having a pain, or, just being able to go to, really, even like right now, like, even just going to the store, and making that be the one thing I do during the day, because I am so exhausted from, just doing that one little task. It's such a minor task to, like, so many people, but, like, for, like, me, it takes everything out of me for the day. So I just really think that, it has taught me just to, not take things for granted and enjoy the small things and like the small victories and, just in general. And, when I'm not feeling great, it's okay to like have my days, but when I feel good, just to keep pushing and just to never give up.
So let's sum this up, Marina, because I think you've really been, a really powerful teacher here during the course of this podcast. And I think one of the things you've taught that was really powerful, which is the last point, is first that life is really a miracle, and there are all kinds of really miraculous things happening every single day, and we just take them for granted, right? I mean, it's a
Yes.
miracle that we have cars that bring us from point A to point B. Something I certainly had taken for granted for my entire life until I interviewed someone who said that she couldn't drive for 2 years, and it was miraculous that, there was this thing called the car that makes it really easy for you to get from point A to point B rather than having to walk or any other, and she just enjoyed going out and taking car rides with her dog, right? Or, we take, air flight, an airplane as, for granted, right? It's not a big deal. But you have a chair in the air flying you across the country. Yeah. I mean, there are all kinds of little miracles that we just take for granted. And then when you have an experience like yours, you now can start to see the miracles in every little thing that we ever do, whether it be air conditioning because you're heat intolerant, or it's your refrigeration, which is miraculous, or all these little miracles that we just take for granted. But we are, as middle class people, living better than kings did just 100 years ago. But we take all that for granted. So it does put us in a position where we're much more appreciative of all of the little miracles that are a part of our current experience.
Yes.
Right? Another really powerful lesson you taught us um, is that this journey that you went on had meaning, right? That there was a reason why you had to go through all of this, and you had to go through all this so that you could learn more about how to use your talents, not for you, not for your glory, but for the glory of bringing awareness to this disease so you can help other people avoid this disease and help other people who are going through this disease understand that it will paralyze you, but you can't allow it to paralyze you because you are going to have to move physically, and you're going to have to move emotionally, and you're going to have to move spiritually and
Yep.
serve other people. And the third really powerful piece, the lesson that you taught here, which is why you're a blessing, and this podcast has been such a blessing, is that in order to be a spiritually healthy person, you have to recognize that you've been made to serve, right?
Yes.
You are here to serve other people. And once you understand what your purpose is, once you understand what your gifts are, you can then identify the people you're supposed to be serving. And now you'll use your God-given gifts and talents to serve other people, which allows you to now become spiritually healthy, which will then allow you to become more emotionally healthy, which will then allow you to become more physically healthy. So, Marina,
Yes.
you are an absolute blessing, and these really powerful lessons that you taught us and taught the folks who are blessed to listen to this have been really fantastic. You're really a fantastic young woman.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for having me. This has been amazing.
So, Marina, why don't we end this podcast the way we started it? Can you give us a closing refrain on "Paralyzed," that really powerful song that you've shared with the world?
Um, Wait, I'm sorry. And yeah, you cut off right there. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I'd like you to wind down the podcast the way we started it, but with you singing a few more of the refrains of
Oh,
"Paralyzed."
okay. I'm gonna just do from the little part of it from the beginning.
Okay.
Trapped in the dark, can't even feel my heart beating. Will I fall apart? Or is this just phantom feeling? But I refuse to lose my mind. I'm not giving up on my life.
Thank you, Marina. It was a
Thank you.
blessing to interview you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.